Welcome back. Joining me today is Professor Wayne Lesperance, professor at New England College. Wayne, let's continue our conversation. So we talked a little bit about Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, the Democratic side. I may come back to that in a later segment, but I want to switch to the Republicans. What are the big storylines out of the Republican results?
Sure. So, one of the things that we've all been wondering is Trump for real? Was he going to have a ground game? We were questioning that after Iowa because it didn't seem to work out so well for him there. There's going to be a lot of first-time voters. Are they going to break for Trump? These are all the big questions.
And were they even going to come out?
And were they even going to turn out? Remember, we had this sort of wild card of some snow the night before, and so folks were saying, oh, that could hurt, turn out as well. Turns out, folks really did turn out. I mean, there's sort of a famous story now going around about Merrimack, the largest polling station in New Hampshire.
And the only one in the town.
And the only one in the town, for whatever reason. I'm sure that'll be revisited.
Well, my town has only one, but we have like a fraction of the...
Merrimack's a pretty good-sized town for New Hampshire. But you had cars in line on the highway going back 3 miles, people waiting to find a place to park so they can go and cast their vote at 7 o'clock when the polls are supposed to close. So there certainly was a tremendous amount of interest. So what does that all mean? When you look inside the numbers, Trump wins. He wins big. He wins by a margin that few of us thought was real. He also, when we look at the issues, when we asked voters what they cared about, right? They want somebody who they believe was trustworthy. Trump wins in that category among exit poll interviewees. They wanted somebody who was going to project confidence and strength. He wins there with those folks. They wanted somebody, they picked Trump as the person that would handle an international crisis the best. They wanted somebody who they believed would stick to the promise of banning Muslims. 2/3 of Republican primary voters said, actually 66% said, they supported a temporary ban on Muslims coming into the country.
Is that indicative of the country? Or is that just an anomaly of New Hampshire?
But here's the thing. If it is indicative, along with numbers that say that the number one issue of concern to Republican voters is terrorism, if you start to put all of these things together, if this is where the country is now, plus being angry at their own Republican leaders, half said they were angry at Republican leaders of their own party, and 9 out of 10 are very frustrated with Washington in general. You put all these numbers together and you have written the script for Donald Trump. Now, the big question is, South Carolina feel this way? Does Nevada feel this way? Do other states feel this way? And if they do, Donald Trump is in a very good place. He's in a very strong position to go forward. And we have yet to see, really, an establishment Republican take him on in a way that really blunts his strength. You can look at Ted Cruz in Iowa, but that still was a pretty close result. And as we go on, we'll see how that plays out in other states. I think, if you're not a Trump fan, if you're a Jeb fan or a Kasich fan or a Rubio fan or whoever, you're looking at this and you've got to be nervous because the data coming out of New Hampshire is very, very good for Mr. Trump. And the big question, as you've just said, is does this translate other places? So when we get to South Carolina, we're going to find out.
When we look at the exit polling about Trump, was it Republicans that voted for him or independents? Independents.
So Republicans is about even.
So a closed primary state,
right.
He might not do as well.
He might not do as well. That's true. It's a fair point that independent voters, this is also true with Bernie Sanders, by the way. With Bernie and Trump, it was the independents. It was also the first-time voters. Trump's, in terms of education, people with high school or less overwhelmingly went for Donald Trump. So you can begin to paint a picture of who a Trump supporter is. But there's a lot of them, and they're coming from all walks of life. But in this case, to your question, it was certainly the independent voters that really tipped the scales for him.
And I don't know this, and maybe you don't. Is South Carolina open? Can independents vote?
I don't know.
Closed?
I'd have to go look. I think it is an open primary, but I have to go look.
I mean, because that would also play a
Absolutely.
big role. You talked about the ground game with Trump.
Sure.
And everybody said the ground game wasn't there. Was the ground game here? I mean, does he really have an infrastructure?
The amount of time he spent in the last week here after Iowa, I think it's fair to say Trump got spooked. I think he got scared. He did something he hadn't done very much of throughout the primary process. He actually came and stayed in New Hampshire. We were used
overnight
to,
even?
Oh yes, we were used to him flying in, doing his events, and flying right back out. The biggest expense in the Trump campaign, aside from salaries, by the way, is jet fuel. Just FYI.
Okay.
Anyway, a little tidbit. But he was spending the time here, and they were really getting out and doing some retail politicking, which he hadn't done a lot of. It was a sort of violating, in a sense, our tradition in New Hampshire. But he was doing it this last week, and he did have a ground game. At the end of the day, they did get folks out. Corey Lewandowski, his campaign manager, did a fantastic job. He's a New Hampshire guy. He gets it. And they got people to vote. And that became this sort of tagline at the end of every one of his speeches. For all the other controversial things he said, he made sure to finish with, I don't need your money, I need your vote. Make sure you vote.
All right, we're out of time in this segment, but when we return, we're going to continue our conversation focusing on the other Republicans, so please stay with us.